Hello everybody, this is Fernando for the latest Cryptids of the Week video. Well, this was another entry that was placed in one of my past Urban Legends over a year or so ago videos, and so in looking at this, it seems like it was actually more along the lines of a cryptid side. And when I read more of this information related to this cryptid, it was so fascinating, so much good info, especially with the nasty way that this thing, wherever it was, even if it is alive to this day, how it killed its prey. I just had to share it here because this stuff definitely stood out. It has a very interesting name, two of them in fact, if you could believe that. So that's why I wanted to also focus on that here. So it's known, and I'm talking about this, it's known as the Beast of Bladenboro, which is an interesting name of its own, but it has an even more fascinating moniker. In this case, it's also known as the Vampire Beast, and I'll explain the reasoning why for that here in just a minute. But let's go ahead, let's talk about all the information associated with this cryptid of the week. So what was, or what is, if it's still out there, this Beast of Bladenboro? Well, it was apparently a vampire-like monster that was found here in the United States, specifically Bladenboro, North Carolina, hence the name of it, back in December of 1954. So it's been quite a ways back, not too far, although it does seem like if you wanted to go back even a little further, because there were some other incidences that happened in 1953, there's that possibility too. But yes, whatever happened in that remote town there in North Carolina, specifically over a set of 10 days. And then even now, describing this thing, whatever it looks like, and you'll see various interpretations of it, is still left up to debate, because the eyewitnesses and everyone who has seen it, they have not had clear, concise detail as to how it looks like. In fact, it's even been surmised that it was mainly just a regular animal, but in the haste of things, people misinterpreting things, there's that angle. So I'm going to go ahead and I'll describe that later on too. But as far as how it truly looked like, if you wanted to go by one person, in this case a guy by the name of Malcolm Frank, he apparently saw this creature crossing the street nearby his residence. And the way he saw it, it was something that looked like it was about 4.5 feet long. He described it as having very bushy fur. And then he also stated it resembled something like a mix between a bear and a panther, not necessarily one or the other, but if you took them in a blender and then whatever the result came out, it seemed like that's what it appeared like to him. So nothing small, because clearly if something is the size of a bear or a panther, it's not going to be a tiny thing, but it was not necessarily a gigantic thing either. And then there was another person named Carl Pate who also saw the monster. The way it was described, according to him, it was a little bit smaller. In fact, it was almost like it was running somewhere along the lines, I guess, at night. And then a little bit later after that, there was another resident by the name of James Pittman who saw it moving beyond the bushes at night too. But he interestingly heard something too. He heard like a cry, a baby crying. The unknown if this was like maybe the sound that this thing makes on its own, or if it was something else completely different. But when he went outside to investigate, he saw something that resembled what others had seen, but then in this case it was a creature that was close to 150 pounds is the way he described it. So this was something that was also pretty large. 150 pounds is nothing to joke about when it comes to something along that size too. And then finally there was another encounter by Lloyd Clemens, who saw this creature as well. It said it was something about 20 inches high, had a long tail, about 14 inches the way it was stretched out. That this time though he was able to give a description on the fur, like the color of it, and the way he described it was basically dark, but the face on this creature looked something along the lines of a cat, but much larger than, let's say, your average cat. In one of my past cryptids I talked about that too, with regards to the legend of something out there that is basically your average size, like your cat, you and I, domiciled cat, whatever we have in our homes, but much, much larger. So imagine something like that here, where it's a creature that has the face of a cat, but much bigger, like the face is much bigger all around than, let's say, your average size cat. But those are, again, all varied descriptions regarding this creature. Nothing concrete, nothing that you can necessarily say this is how it looks like. These are all just encounters, various ones that people have had in terms of a visual encounter. Now, as far as the really nasty stuff I was mentioning earlier with regards to this creature and the way that it killed its prey, this is why it stood out. So the very first attack, if you go by the notion of it being in around 1953, December 31st, there was a person there that lived in Bladenboro named Johnny Vowles, and he stated, and what's interesting is that all these attacks, the majority of them seem to encounter just dogs. He stated that his two dogs were quote-unquote torn into ribbons, and more importantly, they were crushed. Like, whatever did this to his dogs took those dogs and then just completely bludgeoned them. Like, it absolutely just ripped them to shreds. In fact, it was notable too because one of the dogs was killed one night. The family found it. This guy Johnny Vowles found it, wrapped the dog in a blanket, presumably left it there, I guess, for burial the next day. But when he came back to try to get that dog was then gone. So this thing returned. This thing actually came back and then got that dead dog a second time. And then with his other dog, it seemed like it came back yet another morning, killed the other dog as well. And then when they went to try to look for the dog, they absolutely found it, but they found that its head was torn off. Its body was completely demolished, again, torn into ribbons, just crushed, and seemed like it was wet, like it was just recently like saliva wet, like it was in the mouth of whatever this creature was. And in an even more disgusting visual standpoint, its jaw was also ripped off. So this beast of Bladenboro, was definitely something that was not just like a regular animal killing something and then just eating it outright, or just leaving it there after, let's say, it went on a hunt. No, in this case, it completely just demolished these creatures, presumably while they were alive, until up to a point, of course, that they were dead. But it did this, and then it did this in the most vicious way possible. So unlike anything else truly out there, I mean, I haven't heard of any other animal that does along those lines. Normally when you have something that can kill another animal, the most common feature is like, let's say, in the wild, your average lion, whatever is the case, I mean, they'll try to grab it by the throat and then just have it suffocate, and then it's dead, and then they start eating it. Very rarely, of course, there's videos out there where it shows those poor animals being eaten alive, but in most cases it's the idea that from a common sense standpoint, I mean, these animals, they want to kill this thing outright as quickly as possible, and so they suffocate it, and then that's it, it's over. But no, whatever this was, this beast of Bladenboro, it was going for a far more vicious route. So, and then also, I was alluding to this earlier, the reason why it's called the vampire beast is that, yet again, over several more nights, in January 1st, 1954, 2 more dogs were found dead, and then January 2nd, there was another dog that was found dead as well. But if you cut to January 3rd, yet 2 more dogs were also found dead, and then when these dogs were inspected, or autopsied, if you will, there was found that their blood was practically gone. Absolutely all of the blood was hereby gone from their bodies. The way the police chief at that time, Roy Flores, described it, he stated there was no more than 2 or 3 drops of blood within one of the dogs. And it followed the same thing too, where in this case the bottom jaw was smashed open, almost like it was trying to be ripped off, and then the bottom lip was also broken off. And then the tongues, this is another interesting thing, the tongues within these 2 dogs were also chewed out or ripped out as well. So again, very, very vicious nature, but in this case with the added circumstance of no blood found within these dogs, hence that's why it's called the vampire beast as well. But then as far as other encounters, certainly it happened for the next couple of days, most stuff involving more pets. In this case, more dogs were found dead. There was a rabbit that was also found decapitated, which was also interesting to note because this resembled the circumstance involving some of the other dogs where they were found with their heads gone as well. And then yet another animal, in this case a goat, was found dead too. Head was apparently smashed to the ground as like really flat, almost as like if something ran over it, but it wasn't ran over. Instead, something was just smashing it to the ground. And this goat is claimed like as another victim of the beast of Bladenboro. But then that was it. It stopped. After that time period, it stopped, and it hasn't occurred, if you believe the stories, up until the 2000s, so several decades later. Now, the reasoning why it might have stopped is because of this. By this point, there was a big hunt for this monster. I mean, there was fear in the town there in Bladenboro from what was going on, so much so that children were not allowed out at night because of what was happening. And there was a group of men who would now on a nightly basis comb through those forests nearby the area, all of them with guns, to try to find this creature. This thing got so much publicity that it was even nationally publicized throughout multiple newspapers ranging from Arizona to New York. So definitely this was something that was taking on a life of its own. And then there was one fateful day or one fateful night where some of the men found, in this case, a cougar, I believe, if I'm not mistaken. It was either something along the lines, I'm sorry, a bobcat. I think it was one of those last nights. They found a bobcat. 800 people turned out to hunt this thing. One of them, or a group of them, found this thing. They shot it, and you're looking at the picture associated with that encounter here. And then that was it. After this was done, there was no more reported animal carcasses, animal killings, people seeing this animal, like this beast of Bladenboro, nearby their residence, like some of the other experience I was mentioning earlier. Nothing like that. It was so much so that even the mayor called off the hunt after this bobcat was killed. Now, is that pure coincidence? Like, was it truly this bobcat that was the main player involving the beast of Bladenboro? That's still up for debate. In fact, some people even state that it was something along the lines of another real-life animal, in this case a cougar, a very large cougar, but that for whatever reason was never found, and then just by coincidence decided to stop its hunting around that area during that time period. But that's still up for debate. In fact, that was also alluded to in Monster Quest. Apparently Monster Quest did a show on it back in 2008 on this beast, and when they did so, based on their expedition and what they were able to find, they thought that it was also along the lines of a cougar. But could that be? Who knows? That's up to you to decide. Could it have been the bobcat itself? That's also something else up for debate. Or could it still be, in this case, another creature that just left that area around that same time? Something else that was truly its own cryptid and then is still unidentifiable to this very day. And I was mentioning that if you go to the 2000s, apparently in Lexington back in 2007, there were 60 goats that were found with their blood drained and then their heads crushed. And then also in Greensboro, there was a farmer who lost some of his goats in the same way as well. Could this have been a return of the beast? Who knows? But it's interesting to note that no one was able to truly, I guess, gather evidence or something along those lines to try to find out more information about this thing. But but that seems to be a quote-unquote return of the beast. If that's truly the case, it made its return just one time only, and then that was it, because now 10 years later, 2017, there still hasn't been anything else associated with this creature. No more further encounters either. But that's it. That's pretty much all the info tied to this horrific creature. There's just a way that it brutally killed its prey in a very, very hostile manner, just eviscerating its prey, most likely again while it was still alive, ripping them to shreds, and in some cases draining their blood completely. Very, very fascinating information when it comes to this beast of Bladenboro. But if anyone has anything else to share, anything else I might have missed, anybody there from North Carolina, anybody that has heard that legend even to this day, it's bound to be something that people still talk about, considering the ramifications that this thing did to its prey. So if anyone has such information, please post those comments below, share them with everyone. That'd be really great to hear. So all right, everybody, thanks again as always. Take care.